Alrighty then, Здравствуйте, comrades. Welcome to episode 2 of T-Rise YOLO Chats. Today we are having a little bit of a convo about the Cheka. So, remember last time we talked about how things all went a little bit nuts after the October Revolution, particularly the wine pogroms, or the wine riots as they called them, the civil servant strikes, and the violence on the streets. A whole series of things that made for a considerable amount of instability for Sovnarkom, the new Soviet government. Now, why the Bolsheviks encouraged popular violence, they weren't wanting to allow a continuation of social anarchy. And in particular, the wine riots really bothered them because if you were a bit drunk, you weren't able to build socialism. And Lenin specifically referenced this when he said, "The bourgeoisie are bribing the outcast and degraded elements of society and plying them with drink to use them in riots. Urgent measures are necessary to fight the counter-revolutionaries and saboteurs." So two things to keep in mind there, that idea that urgent measures, action was required, and that what was going on was considered acts of counter-revolution. Therefore, key date, 7th of December 1917, the All-Russian Extraordinary Commission for Combating Counter-Revolution, Speculation and Sabotage was formed. Have a very careful look at that full title. In the acronym, it was the Cheka. There was the Extraordinary Commission, and note that it's a national body, hence that all-Russian element to it. The extraordinary element to it suggested that it was outside regular law, irregular, and that its focus for combating counter-revolution, so that one's obvious, any groups who are opposed to the revolutionary government, but also speculation, so that references the bourgeoisie, and sabotage, well, that could be anybody. All right. Now, first of all, it was considered a temporary measure, the founding of the Cheka, an emergency measure, but and its initial powers were quite humble, I guess you'd say, that they were only able to publish lists of enemies of the people and confiscate ration cards. Now, the person who founded the Cheka, who was put in charge of it, was this handsome gentleman here, Felix Dzerzhinsky. He was a Polish, a long-standing member of the Bolshevik Party. His nickname was Iron Felix because he was known for his toughness, his inscrutability. He'd spent quite some time in prison, and the Bolsheviks knew that he could be absolutely trusted. So he was seen as a logical choice for the leadership of the Cheka. He'd also previously been running the security for the Bolshevik headquarters, the Smolny. Initially, the Cheka was quite small. It only had a staff of just 23, and Dzerzhinsky, he carried all the files for the Cheka in one briefcase. That tells you just how considerably small it was. Very soon, though, the Cheka develops more power and grows in size. In particular, this was in response to not only continued opposition to the new regime, but there were threats on Lenin's life. There were bomb threats at the Smolny. And a real turning point was when the Germans invaded following the breakdown of peace talks at Brest-Litovsk, which we'll look at in a later lesson, but just note that this invasion by the German military created a severe crisis. In response to that, so another key date, 21st of February, the Sovnarkom passes the Socialist Fatherland is in Danger decree. And significantly, so I'm going to read here what that gave the Cheka, that enemy agents, profiteers, marauders, hooligans, that's my favourite, counter-revolutionary agitators, and German spies would be summarily shot. Summarily means that they don't have to be put on trial. So execution of enemies now was arbitrary. This gave extraordinary powers then to the Cheka only after a few months. Now, historians have debated the nature of the Cheka, whether it was something that was from the beginning meant to be an organ of terror, of coercion, an expression of authoritarianism, or whether it evolved like that because of external threats like the German invasion, the Civil War, and the terror, which we'll look at in another lesson. So some things to consider. But importantly, get on the forum and discuss this before I sickle you, fully sickle. There's a conversation to be had about the degree of continuity and change. How Was the Cheka like the Okrana, and how was it different? So something to think about. Till next time, до свидания!